Previously on Master of Machines.
Watch the back tire in this replay.
Oh, boys, we broke it. So I felt a little crazy on the leaves. And as you can see, the tire axle tube just cracked. So I got everything all welded up. Like, I don't have any doubt. This is perfection. I love it. Now to head to BSP to get it all set up again. Greetings, folks. Steve here. Tonight I am at the shop at BSP and I got old Goldie on the rack. As you saw last week, we got the axle welded up and repaired. And so I'm just here to finalize that, get the fluid topped off, get the whole rear end set up and aligned, check ride height, look for any kind of damage that could have resulted from the twisting, torquing, pulling, pushing forces that this thing would have experienced after that tube snapped. I'm not really sure what components would have been the most affected by that. I think what probably happened is it towed in really hard as the tire was pushing forward, but the broken section was kind of pulled back by the ladder bars. I think the rear just towed in really hard on both sides, and at least as far as the axle shaft inside would have allowed. So chances are the axle shaft probably took a lot of the brunt, I would think, because that was really the thing limiting it from just mangling all the arms. There's not really any great way to test that. I did just do kind of like a visual check on the flange of the axle of the affected side while I turned it before I put it back in the car, just to make sure it didn't have any kind of like walk to it or wobble or noticeable run out. So I do think that's pretty good. I don't think we're really gonna have to mess with any of that. But just wanna go over, get our thrust angle, our tracking, and ride height all centered and good so we can get her back out on the town. Kind of going through the normal progression here that we would at the shop. We do quite a bit of drag race alignments for a lot of street cars that are used for drag racing. And so there's some steps that we take to kind of ensure that we're targeting a spec that makes sense for what that car is used for. So I got weight in the car to simulate me sitting in it. So we're gonna get ride height sorted out, but I can make some adjustments of weight distribution using the coilovers. You do that by changing the height of the shock on each corner. By extending the shock, you're adding more weight to that corner. And you do that until what you're trying to target is an equal cross weight, which is going to be the combined weight of the left rear wheel and the right front wheel. You want to be really like very close to perfectly even with the total weight of the left front to the right rear. Now, obviously, in most cars, you're going to have more weight on the left side than the right side, at least here in the States, because your steering wheel and your column and your driver are all on the left side of the car. So that's not something we really try to battle, but by getting the cross weights the same, it'll make a car more balanced turning in terms of left to right. You'll have similar balance when you turn left as you will when you turn right, which is what you want. You don't want to favor one direction unless you're doing like circle track stuff, which I know very little about. I also think that by increasing the ride height and adding rake to the car, we're going to change the way that the car launches. And I'm not sure if that's what I want. So right now what I see when I watch the video of the car launching is the front comes up a lot. You see a lot of extension in the front suspension. Obviously, we were pulling the tires off the tarmac, so we're using all that travel. Wheelies, as fun as they are, they're not a good thing. They are hard on the suspension. They're hard on components. And, not every track is gonna take that much of a hit to be able to lift the front tires. As soon as the weight of the car begins to lift off the suspension, you have a rapid change of forces that transfer to the rear wheels. That's why when you see drag cars, like if you watch videos of drag racing cars on like low prep or like no prep type surfaces, the cars that are doing the best are the ones that are getting low in the back and the front is just stretched out. And these guys spend a lot of money on front shocks that have a lot of travel, much more travel than you would normally find. And that's because as soon as the front is no longer carrying any weight of the vehicle, everything's on the back tire and the nose wants to pull down. Once the springs are no longer helping support that weight and it's suddenly all in the rear, that's when you're gonna knock the tires off the thing. So we really want to be able to have front tires down as much as possible to just give it a better shot at getting traction in less perfect conditions. Now, XRP is a very sticky track. Texas Motorplex is usually a very sticky track too. So those are our only two samples so far. But we're gonna definitely get into some slippery stuff with this thing before long. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get some ride height measurements, figure out how far we are off in the rear, and try to get that close by adjusting the rear coilovers. Then I want to take a look at the alignment. Another thing I'm going to do here that is specifically related to the racing that we do here at the shop on our drag racing cars that we work with is squat the rear end or lift the front end. So I want to know what the lifting of the nose of the car does to the front alignment. I have a camber issue up here. I have a bent strut, but I'm not really worried about camber so much. What I'm worried about is toe. Most cars are going to toe in or out as the suspension changes in the front. So I want to know what that's going to do, and that's going to help dictate what specs I decide to go with whenever I go to set the front toe. If I see that the car goes toe out like crazy when the nose comes up, then I'm going to give it a little more toe in. At the back of the track, the nose is going to be mostly down by then. You're not going to have the torque. You're not going to have the gear reduction anymore. So the nose will be low at the top of the track. So I can't do my whole alignment solely based on the nose being up, but I have to find a medium ground here. I probably won't need to squat the rear of the car because this car doesn't really squat. Like, I don't really have squat. But yeah, these are the things I'm thinking about right now. These are kind of the motions we're going to go through, and I'll just kind of show you guys what I see along the way, and kind of talk with you about how I'm going to make my decisions moving onward. I'm going to get 2 ride height readings, one of them from rim to fender. And for that measurement, we're going to get from the bottom of the rim straight in front of the hub up to the fender. We like to have this measurement more for cosmetics, really. Like, most street cars, people are choosing their ride height for appearance more than anything. Obviously, handling's an interest, but it doesn't really have any effect on anything because they're not racing competitively. So we're always going to take that number and try to make sure everything is even from side to side. But another number we want to take is we want to get like an actual rake reading. And so typically we're going to get that from the pinch weld. But as you can see, Old Goldie's pinch welds are in despair. So they're not going to be a good point of measurement for me. So instead, I'm going to find some alternate spots. And I'm going to put a paint mark on them with a permanent paint pen so I can reference it later on when I go to make this measurement again. Back here, I think the wise thing to do is going to be to reference the ladder bar, the front mounting point of the ladder bar for our ride height for rake and ride height, because from a suspension geometry standpoint, when we're looking at these numbers, the decision we're making here is completely based on what we want the suspension to do. Everything is going to revolve around the ladder bar mounting as far as our launch goes. So we are going to use just the front mounting point of the ladder bar. It's more important that those are the same than it matters the body at all. So we're going to go off of those numbers for our ride height and rake. Looking at our fender gaps, everything is pretty good. We have a pretty big disparity between the left front and right front, but there's nothing we can do about that. They are not adjustable. The right side is almost half an inch lower than the left side. And honestly, a lot of that could have to do with that excessive negative camber we have on that right front wheel. As that wheel leans in, a lot of times, depending on the suspension arrangement, that can cause have an effect on ride height too. So typically when we're doing this like corner balance, ride height, rake, alignment setup on race cars, we're doing all those things. We're not going to dial any one thing in completely and call it done. What we're going to do is we're going to begin to get something close. We're going to start out getting the ride height close. Then we're going to take a look at the alignment, and then we're going to get the alignment close. And then we're going to throw it up on the scales, and we're going to get corner balancing close. But the effect that corner balancing has on ride height is huge. Like, you're changing your ride height to obtain the corner weights that you want for what you're doing. All right, so we got our numbers here. This is what we ended up with from the frame points that I chose. Rear anchors in the back, we have a 3/16 difference from left to right, which is a little surprising. This side's high with an extra 180 pounds on that side, but that's just the way that is. And then the front really is very equal. We got 5 15/16 on one side and 5 7/8 on the other, so only a 16th different on the front left. Now that is a lot different than what we see here from our fender gaps. So this is why we use a different set of data points depending on what we're trying to achieve, because if a customer comes in and wants their car ride height adjusted and we go by these numbers alone, you might end up with a crazy fender gap. It really is not uncommon at all to see a huge discrepancy between pinch weld or frame measurements and the fender gaps. Like even like a car that has never been in an accident, has nothing wrong with it, it's not uncommon at all to see that. So if we're going for looks, we're going with fender gap. If we're going for performance or data on the racetrack, we're going to go by those frame readings. I really can't do much with these frame readings in terms of making a decision right now as far as rake adjustment or anything like that, because first of all, like I chose these points in kind of an arbitrary manner and I really don't have that much data. These are going to be baseline numbers, but as for right now, I'll probably just leave that alone. The main thing I wanted to confirm is that we didn't have a huge height difference from left to right. So as for right now, I'm not going to change the ride height at all. So now we got the alignment heads on the car and I've already done my compensation. I'm not worried about caster at all, so I'm not even measuring it. Don't care. Can't change it. Doesn't matter. So you can see my camber situation in the front. It's not like, I mean, it's not good, but it's not crazy. It's not that big of a deal. But man, when you're looking at this thing, you sure can see that camber. And I don't really care for that. I'm totally okay with this side. I'm going to try to improve this side today. Toe's not great, but not awful. We got some negative toe. And then rear, we can't do anything about because of the live axle. Interesting camber readings, but doesn't really matter. Total toe, 1/4 degree. It's positive, so that's good. But that's totally 100% has everything to do with the cut and the weld of the tube, and it just, you know, I mean, just making it perfectly freaking true is just really hard. But inside of 1/4 degree is fine, and it's positive, so I'm totally cool with that. Negative toe gets a little weird. You really don't want to have negative toe. It has very strange handling characteristics. Like dedicated track cars will run negative toe, but nothing else does. So I'm going to try to get that camber down. I got to work on this thrust angle. That's not ideal. And also the tracking rod is clearly going to need some adjustment, and I'll show you why I say that. Whenever I was taking my measurements, you can see like how the tire is kind of inward of the fender. Like the fender is sticking out further than the tire on this side. But then on this side, they're like flush. The tire might even be sticking out a little bit. So I do need to kind of scooch the whole axle over. That's real easy to do. So I'm going to do that before I do anything with the thrust angle. But in all certainty, I'm going to be adjusting the thrust angle to get it a little closer to 0 because 0.3 is a little excessive. May have the car kind of dog tracking going down the track. And then I'm going to go ahead and double check my pinion angle just because of the crazy stuff that took place down back here whenever that thing broke. So we can see, looking at this illustration here, that we are almost 0.2 inches shifted that way. So 2/10 of an inch out that way. We're going to adjust our track bar until that's nice and centered. So we're going to go about adjusting tracking by turning our tracking bar here. And I've already started to turn a little bit. We're going to make a little turn, give the suspension a little jounce, and come up here and check our number, and we're pretty much perfect. That's a pretty dang good number. Boom, basically nothing. I'm good with that. All right, so now we'll lock this down. There's a quick lesson I can give you here. So when locking these things down, we have a heim on either end. It's like a heim is like an eyelet with a spherical type bushing. They are used a lot in race car applications and race car parts. And one critical error a lot of people make when they install parts with heims is they don't center them. Now, if you look at this heim, it is fully clocked to one way, okay? Now, the other side should be, if this side is all the way to one extent of its travel, this one should be on the same side so that you can rotate the bar and the heims will have flex. But if you have that one maxed out one way, like it is, and this one was maxed out on the opposite side, now you've taken away any ability for these joints to rotate at all. And so they're in a bind. That will cause premature failure of the heim, and it could cause noise, but most importantly, it's going to cause a resistance in the movement of that joint, which is going to be binding your suspension, which is not what you want. So we make sure those are clocked the same way. If you need to adjust them, it's real easy. You just stick a pry bar in there, and you can just walk them over, or you can use a wrench that fits nicely around the heim like that and move it that way. But mine are all in good shape, so I don't have to do that. But you always want to make sure you center your heims. If you don't have a heim on both ends like this, then you would just center it. Like my heim up here in the front. You'll notice that they are not fully at the extent of their travel. They're right in the middle. And all those do is go up and down, right? They just rotate like this. But if that was fully in a bind, then it would be dragging against the bracket, which it bolts to, and causing resistance. All right, so fixing the tracking dimension did help our thrust angle a fair amount, but that's still not very good. So we're gonna go ahead and try to dial that in. So I'm going to adjust this side forward to try to reduce the thrust angle. All right, so put these down like this. And so we got the front bolts for our ladder disconnected, so we can just pull this right down. The only thing keeping this axle in place is the coilovers. So now we're going to be shortening this side. Pull the right tire forward. Now we'll just move these back up into position, torque them down, get it down, the weight back on the axle, give the car a roll, and recheck the alignment and see what our thrust angle is at that point. And hopefully it'll be, if it's inside of 1/10 of a degree, then I'd be pretty happy with that. All right, just dropped the car down, recompensated the sensors, and I still have 0.15 thrust angle. So I gotta sort that out. We're gonna have to lift it up and put a whole nother turn on that right side. All right, so we are sitting at basically perfect on our tracking, and our thrust angle is, that's just fine. We're gonna live with that. But anyway, that's all set up. We got thrust angle is okay. I don't wanna go any further to try to improve it. I'm gonna leave that alone and call that good. All right, y'all, so I'm done with the back of the car. The freaking thrust angle's dialed, the tracking is dialed, the pinion angle's dialed, fluids are full, torqued all my fasteners down from all the work I did, double checked everything. Rear is done. Very happy with it. All right, now we're moving on to the front. So to try to help our camber problem, what I need is a new knuckle and strut tube assembly. For those of you unfamiliar with the 280ZX suspension, the front knuckle, here, I'll just show you. The knuckle is bound to the strut. They are together forever. Whenever you replace struts on this, you have an insert that slides into this tube. This tube is a permanent part of the knuckle. So that's really annoying because you cannot adjust camber through these means. So in order for me to help the camber of this car, I would have to replace the entire knuckle and strut tube assembly. So in lieu of doing that, I'm hoping to be able to adjust this thing to be good enough by another means. So the way that we can change the camber in the car without having to swap out the knuckle and the strut tube is by elongating the upper strut mount holes. Now I've already done a couple here. If you see, this is the shape and size that it used to be. And now you see these two are already a little bit longer. By elongating these holes, we can pull the whole strut outward at the top, and that's going to reduce our negative camber and hopefully get it to match the other side a little bit more closely. I've just elongated these like, I don't know, maybe 3/8 of an inch, if that, but I just kind of made them oval, and I gotta do this one, and then I'll be able to slide that strut out this way. I'm hoping to get these within a degree of each other just to kind of take some of the negative camber out of this side. I'm gonna see what we can get from that. That's really all we can do to that front, but hopefully if I can get it close enough, I don't have to worry about replacing that knuckle to sort out that issue. So for this task, I have a carbide bit, they call it. It's just a file in the shape of a bit that spins on this drill. And it does a pretty good job at taking this material away pretty quickly. All right, baby, we got her under 2 degrees by a good bit. I think we took over half a degree out of the camber on that side. And we still got a decent little split from side to side, but I'm really happy with that. Now we're gonna work on toe. Let's figure out what this toe does whenever the front lifts up. So looking at that total toe, we're at -12. Okay, it goes close to 0. All right, so it goes more positive as you raise it. All right, so I don't know if I got maximum lift there. Obviously, I can't lift the whole damn car up with my legs, but we did see it drop about 0.1 degrees in a positive direction on total toe. So about 0.05 of total toe on each side whenever I had it just lifted up with my leg power. You got to think the front end probably comes up substantially more than that, especially since it's been hanging the tires lately. So we don't want to have a lot of positive toe. I want to probably have it pretty close to 0. We don't ever put 0 toe on anything. Things start to feel a little ornery whenever you get to 0 toe or go negative toe. We're always going to put some positive in it. So I am going to stay low, though. I'm probably going to target about maybe 3 to 5 hundredths of toe per side. So maybe like 6 to 10 in the total toe department. Right now, we're a little bit negative. I'm going to target really low positive toe. We're going to get that dialed in, and that's going to be it for the alignment. All right, boys, we're out here hanging out at XRP. Got my boy Chuck with me again, and my man Dublin is here with us too today. It's a little busier today than last week, but I think we'll still get to make lots of passes. Already made a first pass without changing anything. The car was real lazy to get up on the two-step. Chances, I think that's just low bottle pressure in the nitrous bottle. I did not preheat it this time. I thought it was probably okay, but it wasn't, so had a hard time getting up to two-step. Alright, so that was a 637 at 110, so we were kind of down on everything. We'll get good data. I mean, it was a 149.60 foot because obviously we weren't able to make as much power right off the hit. So I made a couple little changes to my nitrous and launch and two-step settings that'll help that. Basically, there's a PSI that the nitrous will stop flowing, and then what's just 100% on turbo while it's getting on a two-step. And the gap between the nitrous shutting off and the two-step engaging was too large, I think. So the nitrous would shut off and the car still didn't quite have enough spool to get up on the two-step. So we adjusted that, took a little bit of time, of fuel out of it. I'm seeing a lot of knock when the nitrous is flowing, and it's running like no timing during that time. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. I'm gonna just leave my knock settings the way they are. They're pretty aggressive in that it takes a lot of timing out as soon as it detects knock. And I'm just gonna kind of keep it that way for now until I kind of decide if it's really knocking or if maybe it's just kind of getting rowdy on the brake and making it think that it might be knocking. Anyway, the car's cooled down now. We're about to go up and make another pass and see if we can do a little better. I'm also targeting more boost on this pass. I've been targeting 18 PSI on the last several runs, but this time I'm gonna go ahead and just target 20 the whole time. It basically goes up to 20 and then like tapers down as the gear goes on. And then it shifts gears and it shoots up to 20 again and then tapers down. So it's kind of already running at 20 during a lot of the pass. So this should just help it stay there and give us a little bit more horsepower up top. So second pass, we were on a good lick and put up a pretty good fight up against a truck. The car's definitely pulling a fair amount of ignition timing, and I'm pretty sure our little turbo is maxed out at its current boost level because I commanded more boost, but it still only made about 18, 19 pounds. But I added a bunch to the leaf here, so we got an extra couple pounds of boost to launch out of the hole. And hopefully the track's good and it'll take it. I think we got a pretty good shot at running a 5-second 1/8 mile with the way the car's set up right now. So we'll see what it does. That's all for this week, folks. Tune in next time. Next week, we're going to the gut, baby. So don't miss that. Click that bell, like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.